If they don't, if he does not, then this will be additional revenues for domestic violence shelters. So what this bill will do is to just simply raise the marriage license fee by $10. It has not been raised since the 80s, and hopefully through that, with that passage, we're going to be able to raise a good chunk of money in the different counties within the state of California. Initially, we scored that bill about $50 million. As you can imagine, a lot of Republicans are not going to be supportive of any fee increases whatsoever, and so what we have done to change that particular bill so that at least it would get out was to allow counties then to opt in, so that it is not mandatory for a county, in fact, to raise that. It is an opt-in, so a particular county will then have to, by a vote of its board of supervisors, then opt into that particular program. A $10 increase will literally raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in different counties, and when you add it up, it is in fact millions of dollars. One bill, and I think Barb said that, you know, I've been successful in getting bills. I don't always. One bill that I am particularly disappointed that I could not get out of my own house was about phone books. As you all know, we have a lot of phone books, not only the white pages, but the yellow pages. Many of them are unsolicited. Many of them sit idly by, and they end up in the trash. They end up in our landfill, and that's just a horrible thing for us to do. You know, in a society when we are clearly understanding that we ought not to be wasting any resources whatsoever, that you ought not to then allow phone companies to print out phone books when you clearly don't want them. And so what our bill would have done was to basically say that in a clear and conspicuous way, on the front cover of either the white pages or the yellow pages, that you ought to then put a phone number whereby individuals who don't want phone books anymore to just simply opt out. Unfortunately, because AT&T and these phone companies are, you know, they are rather large corporations and so on, then they have tremendous influence on some of our members and what have you. I was not able to get sufficient votes to get that particular bill out. You know, what was also rather interesting to me is that there are a lot of businesses that sort of print out these yellow pages. And what was rather frustrating for me is that I couldn't get the point across to many small businesses that, you know, you ought not to, small businesses, pay these exorbitant advertising rates when these yellow page phone book companies basically come and tell you that, well, we're going to charge you an X amount of advertising rate because these phone books are going to reach millions of individuals. Well, in fact, that's bogus. That's not true. That is absolutely a falsehood, because not all of the books that are printed ever gets to a particular individual phone user, because they sit on your front doorstep. If you live in an apartment, they sit in your lobby, and all you end up doing for some individuals to take all of the phone books and dump it into the trash. And that's what happens. Or it sits in your front step, and then you take it and you dump it into the trash. And so what we were trying to do was to at least be a little balanced and saying, rather than to say you have to opt in, you know, you can opt out. But even that was not sufficient for the telephone companies and publishers for the yellow pages. And unfortunately, that bill is dead. I'm not sure what we're going to do in the next session, or maybe at the end of the session, but it is something that concerns me quite a bit. It's just a lot of waste of not only our resources, but then later it's a product that you make that all you end up doing with that particular product is to take it and dump it into the trash, or put it into the recycle bin, or whatever it may be. It's just a horrible way of how we adults treat our environment and treat the limited resources that we have. Then finally, I was asked to talk a little bit about the budget, and let me just kind of give you a sense of where we're at. This is after years and years of cuts, to the point where we have cut $40 billion. Last year we cut $24 billion. And so after about 4 or 5 years of these particular cuts, we are still in an economic slump. I think that some here may sense that it's going up, but the problem is that because we're so far down, that any increase whatsoever is really marginal in its effect on our budget and the quality of our life and the dollars that we have available to spend. So we now have a shortfall of approximately $19 billion. Unfortunately, we were hoping that we were going to get some dollars from the federal government, further stimulus money. That's not going to happen. We were hoping that there was going to be increased revenue because of the April 15th collection out of your personal income or from your business income. That is not coming to fruition. There's a slight bump on the sales tax. That's the reason why we thought that at the end of the day, on April 15th, that is going to translate into rather much larger take on the personal and on business income. So the reality is that we don't have those kinds of dollars. So we're now saddled with about a $19 billion cut. We've got some problems in the Capitol right now. You've got a new speaker. You've got new leadership within the Assembly. And I think that they have felt, many members have felt, that they have made enough cuts and they don't want to make any more cuts. It is of note that last year, when the Senate sent over a budget to the Assembly on the local transportation dollars, which is about a $34 billion price tag, that measure of taking local money, local transportation money, and then using that to fill that particular budget deficit, the Assembly did not, in fact, support, did not go along with the Senate on that particular effort. It is that $34 million hole that caused the governor then to blue pencil the domestic violence program. And so there's a strong sense on the Assembly side that no, we're not going to go ahead and follow the Senate or the governor in making any further cuts anymore. And so as a result, when you look at the website in the Assembly, they don't have a cut budget whatsoever. They have a revenue generating budget. The only problem is that some of their solutions may not necessarily work out. For example, there's one solution that they have, and that is to borrow against the recycling account within the state of California. When you go to the grocery store and you buy a bottle of pop, you have to pay a certain fee for that recycling. Well, that account, the Assembly wants to go ahead and borrow against it. Unfortunately, the Attorney General, Jerry Brown, has opined that you cannot do that. So there's going to be some debate and discussion, but they're sticking to that particular budget. I'm hoping that we will work it out so that we, in fact, have a no-cut budget whatsoever. For the last 4 years, I've not voted for any cuts whatsoever to education, healthcare, and social services. My problem right now in the Assembly and in the Senate in the past